friends, today I'm here to share with you some small town romance recommendations. When I was putting together my TBR for the HEA-a-thon, one of the recommendations was a small town romance. Or one of the challenges was a small town romance. And I started looking at my red shelves instead of my TBR, just because. And I noticed a lot of them, and I just thought, why not do a video on them? So, the first series that I want to talk about is the Winston Brothers series by Penny Reed. So, this whole series takes place in a small town called Green Valley, Tennessee. And the Winston Brothers have had some shit in their life, and they are dealing with it as best as they can, and that's not always the best, but... Another series that I want to talk about is the River's Edge series by Lacey Black. Several years ago, even I think before we had Kindle Unlimited, my sister downloaded book 1. I saw this on there and I picked it up and read it. Book 1 is a single mother using the help of her, I think there were 5 brothers and her parents in raising her child, and I forget exactly what happened. I really need to reread this series. I forget exactly what happened, but it kind of put her in the path of one of her brothers is a police officer and his best friend is his partner, and it kind of puts her in the path of him, and they fall in love. And then, like, each subsequent book is a different brother falling in love. And yeah, I really want to go back and reread this. It's been, I think, 3 years, 2.5, 3 years since I've read this. But I do highly recommend it. The next book I want to talk about is Well Met by Jen DeLuca. And this is not only a small town, it also has a small town feel within the Renaissance Fair that they're working in for the summer. So it's kind of a 2-part thing. But in this one, Emily goes to the small town where her sister lives to help take care of her sister and her niece while her sister is down, I think, broken leg or something. And she ends up going with the niece to sign up for working in the Renaissance Fair and ends up signing up herself. And it's a cute romance. And it's cute. Like, they have like a sisterly thing, like storyline that also happens. And it's so good. Next, I want to talk about the Thunder Road series by Katie McGarry. This is a YA series. All of the main characters are still in high school, I believe. I really should double check that, but I think they are. And this is there's a motorcycle club in the town, but these are the children of the people in the motorcycle club. And in this one, this Nowhere But Here is the first one. I think he's the president or vice president or somebody like higher up in the club. Brings his daughter, who he doesn't really interact with in his home setting. He always goes to where she lives with her mother. He brings her into the town and kind of enlists the help of this younger prospect, or soon-to-be prospect in the club, to like keep her entertained for the summer and everything. And there's actually one book where it's both kids from the club, but her father has passed away and she doesn't want anything to do with anybody, but they're like childhood sweethearts, and the series is so good. If you like motorcycle clubs, romances, definitely pick this one up. It is, like I said, it is YA, it is about high school students, but it's so good. Next is pretty much anything by Daphne Perry. Her Lark Cove series, her Jameson Valley series, her 10 Gypsy series. These all take place in different small towns. I think Daphne Perry is probably the best small town romance writer that I've ever come across. I highly recommend Daphne Perry in general, but especially if you're looking for a small town romance. Next is the start to a series, but I've actually only read this first one, and that is Bearing Water by K.A. Tucker. This one is a bit different. I don't think you really see a lot of the small town element like you do in, say, a Daphne Perry book, but it does. In this book, a woman wakes up in a hospital and she has amnesia. She has no clue who she is, what her name is, how she got hurt, which is a thing. And she goes to stay with one of her doctors is the mother of one of her nurses, and the doctor is also married to the sheriff that's trying to help her figure out what's going on. And so she goes to stay with their neighbor, and like, I don't know how to describe it without giving too much away, but it's very good. Highly recommend it. Next is another YA series, and that is the Field Party series by Abby Glines. This one is a YA sports romance. The series centers around different members of a high school football team, and the series is so good. Sorry, I don't know where that voice came from. The series is so good. It does really well at balancing high school drama, but also like real life things. They are a bit more, well, I was gonna say I would call these a little bit more emotional than the Katie McGarry ones, but they kind of both have their own things, so. Abby Glines also does have her Vincent Boy series is set in a small town. Her Seabree series is set in a small town. And I still haven't gotten to it yet, but I believe her Rosemary Beach series is also set in a small town. One of my favorite cowboy romance authors is Lorelei James, and this is her Blacktop Cowboy series. These take place in rural Wyoming, and they're about cowboys who are rough and tough, but also like really gentle with the women who are a little rough and tough too, and I love them. Next, I want to recommend the Jill Shalvis Wildstone series. So the ones that I have are Lost and Found Sisters, Rainy Day Friends, and The Lemon Sisters. I believe there's one or two more out now, and then one that's coming out soon. But these are set in a small California coastal beach town, and they're really, like, they're romance heavy, honestly. They're pretty significant romances in them, but they're also really about family and how things are not always what they seem to be, and yeah. If you're looking for something that's a lot more emotional, I recommend Rebekah Ellis, The Last Letter, but also her Great and Precious Things that released this year. Both of them take place in different Colorado small towns, but they are way more emotional than I think anything on this list. They're so good, just be prepared. They do have a military element to them, which is kind of where a little bit of the emotion comes in, but also like really strong family bonds, which is where a lot of the emotion comes in. Next up is one that will probably come as a surprise to absolutely nobody, and that is The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker, which again, bit of an emotional one, but I don't think it's quite as emotional as I was in The Last Letter or Great and Precious Things. But in case you are not aware, this takes place in a very small Alaskan community that is very rural, and it does not have... It's got a little bit of city aspect at the beginning because that's where the heroine lives at the beginning, but like once she gets to Alaska, it is not a city in any way. But yeah, again, don't want to spoil too much, but pretty sure a lot of people have read this at this point. The next is one I don't hear a lot of people talk about. They talk about this author, but not this series, and that is the Last Call series by Sawyer Bennett. This is book 1, On the Rocks. Each book kind of has a drink bar type title. This takes place in a small coastal town on the East Coast in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. So, a bit different from the Wildstone series. You can definitely tell the difference in the coasts, the East to the West Coast. I picked up the series originally. I think this first book was free as an ebook, and it was a couple months after we returned from a vacation in the Outer Banks, and it was just really fun, like, going back and seeing all of the places that we went to. So if you've ever been to the Outer Banks, or if you're interested in going to the Outer Banks, I highly recommend picking up this series. Next, I have the Loveless Texas series by Jay Crownover. This is book 1, Justified. This is a small town in Texas. In this book, it is the sheriff of the small town, and he's trying to be a better sheriff than his father was, because his father was really corrupt and everything. And he ends up having to protect the lawyer who, like, kind of helped his ex-wife get custody of their son. So he doesn't really like her. He doesn't really want to, but he's very much about being better than his father was. So he does protect her. And I don't actually have a physical copy of it, but I believe there was a novella before this one released where it was his brother who was a rodeo cowboy who ends up having to take a deal being this brand ambassador, and he ends up falling for the woman that's his like contact at the brand. And then the second one in the series is about their sister, and I don't exactly know where the series is going to go from there. I know that I think there's 2 more. There's one more this year, I think. I think it comes out in the fall. I don't know when it comes out. Anyway, there's more in the series, and I can't wait to get to it. And finally, the last series that I want to recommend for now is the Return to Me series by Corinne Michaels. This one is another small town in Tennessee, and this is another pretty emotional one. But I believe there's 3 books plus a novella in this series, and they are so good. So those are some of my small town romance recommendations. What are some of yours? Leave them for me down below. I'm always looking for more. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.